Good morning. I am Stella Arbeláez Tascon, a candidate for the Master of Fine Arts in Emerging Media, Studio Arts and Design program in the School of Visual Arts and Design at the University of Central Florida. Thank you for being here and welcome to my thesis defense and oral presentation. I thank my committee chair, Dr. Ilenia Colon Mendoza, for her expert guidance, and committee members Jason Burrell and Larry Cooper for their invaluable advice and support. I am deeply grateful to the three of them for the time and effort invested in me, the UCF Gallery staff for their professionalism and dedication in helping me showcase my work in the best way possible, and my family and friends, new and old, who accompany and support me with their presence and thoughts here today. I also want to give special thanks to three important people in my life. To my former husband, JB, thank you for thrusting me into a place where I was forced to reconnect with myself and pursue my own life in my own terms. To my dear friend and mentor, James Paris, thank you for being a rock of support and cheerleader for over 3 decades of friendship. Above all, to my daughter, Laura, thank you for teaching me infinite ways to love unconditionally. This body of work is my gift to you. My thesis and presentation are titled Evolving Perceptions of Self and Others: The Effects of Communing with Nature While Through Hiking the Florida National Scenic Trail. The abstract reads as follows. This body of artwork comprises a thesis that documents and exposes the artist's inner workings as she regained balance after experiencing deep emotional trauma. This individual's healing transformation was prompted by her immersion in nature while walking the Florida National Scenic Trail in its entirety, 1,130 miles, from the Everglades to the Panhandle, in 3.5 months. The artistic research conducted and autobiographical body of work created from it aims to help others reconnect with their own strengths and to seek wellness in the restorative properties of nature, while advocating for an empathetic approach to modern advancement. This approach respects the self, nature, and all creatures as an entity, each essential components of a large ecosystem. This artistic thesis is relevant because through experiential research or lived experiences, it supports that exposure to nature alters our brain, benefiting cognition and our physical and emotional well-being. The work explores how the environment shapes mindset, coping mechanisms, and the overall health of the individual. In this presentation, the acronym FNST refers to the Florida National Scenic Trail. I walked northbound, or NOVO, so I will omit this term in subsequent captions. Photos from the trail display the letters MM, meaning mile marker, followed by a number indicating the exact location where they were taken. Lastly, all images are credited to me, unless noted otherwise. Chapter 1: Packing the Backpack. Biography. La Tierra del Olvido, a song by the Colombian songwriter and singer Carlos Vives, talks about a land of oblivion, a place where nature behaves in poetic harmony while someone eagerly awaits for one's arrival. That is the energy that I carry with me from my native country, Colombia. I was born in Cali, known as La Sucursal del Cielo, or Heaven's Office. I grew up in Bogota as the second youngest of four. My father was a professor of virology and bacteriology at the Universidad Nacional de Colombia, and my mother managed his private laboratory while I attended a strict all-girls Catholic school. My childhood was filled with music, family, and dogs. I learned to dance salsa standing on my father's feet, loved Halloween, roller skating, drawing, and reveled in the joy of life just for breathing. At 15, I arrived in Queens and joined a bilingual junior high program while learning English. I later earned a spot at Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School for Music and Art on artistic merit, and then studied fashion and fine arts illustration at the Fashion Institute of Technology, State University of New York. There I trained under renowned illustrators Karen Santry, Dorothy Labero, Jane Bixby Weller, and Morton Cage, mastering adapting styles for clients, editorial work, and garment illustration. I graduated in 1992. After freelancing in the fashion industry, I landed an internship at Walt Disney Feature Animation, where my eye for movement and love of nature led me to study the motion of natural elements, including mud, smoke, shadows, and more. In 1994, I moved to Orlando to work for the Walt Disney Feature Animation Studio, working as a special effects animation artist. Later, in Los Angeles, I worked for DreamWorks and Warner Brothers. If you have seen these films, you have seen my work. I also freelance in set painting, costume design, and prop making, exploring diverse media, some of which you see here. I educated my child at home, which has been the most challenging, creative, and rewarding endeavor I have pursued, and for this I am eternally grateful. I served my family and community the best I could. I trained our rescue dog, and we became certified as Delta Pet Partners, able to visit healthcare facilities to uplift people's spirits. I served as a Girl Scout leader, art and Spanish teacher at the local recreation center, and was honored as Volunteer of the Year by the City of Burbank in 2005. We moved to Florida in 2013, but by 2014, my world collapsed abruptly. After nearly 20 years together, divorce hit like a death sentence, leaving me barely functional. That zombie year brought deep scars, worsened by my daughter's move to California and my pet partner's death. Shame, anger, and despair consumed me. Isolated and feeling lost, I sought fleeting connections online, only to spiral further into depression. 2 years of torturous thoughts passed. On a whim, I rented a kayak and, to my surprise, felt pure joy floating on the glittering water. At home, my daughter's 9-pound poodle, Boo Boo, constantly urged me to go outside, shifting my perspective. For my 48th birthday, we joined a meetup group for a 4-day, 37-mile hike on the Appalachian Trail. Blood rushed to my legs, my heart pounded, and at the summit of Blood Mountain, I let out a triumphant holler. The leader named me Acorn, urging me to grow strong like an oak. Boo Boo, swift and tireless, became 1-gallon ninja. I embraced hiking and the mantra "nature heals," words I repeated often to my daughter thousands of miles away as she mended her own heart. After hiking nearly 400 miles with Boo Boo, my emotional baggage still weighted me down. In spring of 2020, seeking a reset, I walked the Florida National Scenic Trail. Immersed in nature, I reconnected with myself deeply. Mile after mile, sweat cleared my vision, fresh air my mind, and I remember that being alive is an extraordinary gift. Here is the trail map, stretching from Big Cypress in the Everglades to Fort Pickens near Pensacola. Through hikers generally start north or south, forging their own path. Of the people I met on my trek, two hikers stood out. New Bear, a former Marine I met at mile marker 7, and Just Jeff, a retiree from Ohio I met at mile marker 860. We walked together until COVID-19 halted us in early April at mile marker 1030, just 100 miles from our goal. That Christmas, I returned with Boo Boo and finished the trail. Completing the FNST gave me the courage to pursue my MFA 3 decades after first considering it. To prepare for graduate school, I began practicing transcendental meditation and, at 53, underwent detailed assessment confirming my diagnosis of ADHD. Knowing this equipped me with the tools to approach life with compassion and self-love. The challenges I have faced have shaped who I am and influenced the concepts I share through my work. Chapter 2: Pointing the Compass Northbound: Initial Encounters with the Trail. In the book The War of Art, Steven Pressfield explains that fear must not only be faced, but must be surpassed on a daily basis for an artist to evolve. After my hike, fear held me in creative limbo, questioning the collateral damage that my creativity causes the earth. This is why I am committed to produce work that is of service to people and nature, which I view as a living entity. I examine the intersections of personal experience and broader societal constructs, such as consumerism, gender roles, romantic love, doctrines, and time. I purchase and consume new materials selectively, opting to use resources already owned, repurposed, or donated. Through my work, I aim to entice a higher level of consciousness directed towards the nurturing of the self and the protection of nature, while increasing appreciation and respect for it. Conceptually, my work relates to Louise Bourgeois. Like her, I use it as therapy to process trauma and distill my realities. Also inspired by Ana Mendieta and the ecofeminist movement, I amplify oppressed voices, including mine as a Latina in the United States, and nature's. This and the deconstruction of societal norms prompts my emerging practice to turn political. My work includes performance art, two and three-dimensional works and installations, focusing on significant people in my life, experiences, and FNST locations. This thesis presents selected works created as I explore my place in the canon of art. Whether I am performing, working digitally, or on paper, on canvas, or an installation, drawing is at the core of my practice. This foundation allows me to render my ideas using familiar imagery to ground my themes in the tangible. My aesthetic is influenced by Baroque and Romanticism, artists Peter Paul Rubens, Francisco Goya, and Gustave Doré. Contemporary master Ansel Kiefer and artists who engage in similar and traditional legacies also influence the aesthetics of some of my work. My initial impressions of the trail manifested on the first piece I created following my through hike, titled The Nature Goddess, an alter ego and the personification of a force that protects non-human life and nature. She laments their fate due to human folly, such as the destruction of forests for suburban sprawl and hunting as a sport. Her staff contains an animal skull found at mile marker 200 of the FNST, which adorned my hat on my walk. In December of 2021, the Nature Goddess performed a 20-minute moon convocation at Lake Louisa State Park. Though materially distinct, the work shares conceptual ties with ecofeminist Ana Mendieta, the Cuban artist who used performance, sculpture, and film to protest issues she experienced and observed related to feminine oppression and domination through nature. Mendieta once said, quote, "My art is the way I re-establish the bonds that unite me to the universe. It is a return to the maternal source. Through my earth and body sculptures, I become one with the earth." End of quote. Like Mendieta, I recognize the magnitude of the female form, and through my body and its actions, I connect to nature. In Moon Convocation, my mythological woman defies concepts of power, punishment, and redemption, turning the tables on the oppressor and exploiter. A 2002 study by Favor et al. Found that proximity to nature improves self-discipline in girls ages 7 to 12. including concentration and impulse control. This research deepened my exploration of the feminine-nature connection and awareness of my creative processes while outdoors. A small group of pastel paintings at Flat Island Preserve followed the nature goddess, helping me overcome fears that once hindered my art. I used color to capture the site's energy, evolving from flat renderings to three-dimensional forms. Diagonal lines and textures evoke movement, creating a visual poem. My body of work is an interpretative phenomenological research in which I am both the subject and the researcher. Thus, it is also a metaconscious experience. Chapter 3: One foot in front of the other, making a connection. When I read the words, "I want a divorce" via text, I collapsed. After decades of atheism, I sought solace in a Christian congregation, but left when the preacher endorsed a political candidate. Instead, I found comfort in long walks with Boo, connecting the wind, birds, sky, and sun with my happiness. The outdoors became my church, and my Sunday walks a vital physio-spiritual practice. There, nature's love requires no tithes, and this is enough for me. The first set of mile markers I created is a group of studies based on photographs taken during my walk. The use of a monochromatic and limited value scale forced me to quickly identify shadows, midtones, and highlights. This also marked the beginning of the evolution of my concepts. At the time, I was convinced that I would only paint depictions of the trail using the many references I had taken. Shown here, in the order the sites were found, these paintings allowed me to begin putting one foot in front of the other in what was to become an even larger feat, finding my artistic voice. The Child's Dinner at mile marker 25.8 reimagines this location at night. As a child, my father called us his mochuelos, or young owls, linking us to Athena's wisdom. The owl became my spiritual animal, inspiring this self-portrait, an updated version of a work created decades prior. Set in Big Cypress National Preserve, one of the toughest hiking sections of the continental United States, it symbolizes challenges that I have overcome. A tilted perspective and diagonal tree shadows suggest movement and flight, while a limited palette transforms the scene into a quiet moonlit moment. For the Kogi people of Colombia, the owl is a connection to the spiritual realm, while the snake symbolizes creativity and renewal. Through an indigenous people's lens, this painting holds great significance for me. This section of the FNST is followed by the lands of the Seminole Sovereign Nation, accessible only by permit. Walking Big Cypress as a legal visitor, I also felt like an intruder in what remains of the Seminole Nation, a privilege often overlooked, as people forget about the original stewards of these lands, the Seminole and Miccosukee Indians. Like other indigenous peoples worldwide, they are forced to rely on legislature and policies set by outside governments to function in their ancestral lands and avoid the disappearance of their cultural and spiritual heritages. Divorce blindsided me and disconnected me from life, making social interactions exhausting. However, once I felt unified with the massiveness of the land I was walking upon and the elements around me, I became revitalized. Unity, a principle of design, brings together elements of art like line, shape, and color to form a cohesive whole. In the same way, the people we meet make our human experience. The portrait of Jeffrey Cassar from Akron, Ohio, depicts a friend that Newbear and I met at Apalachicola National Forest, when the aches and pains of the trail took a serious toll on my body and in our spirits. Jeffrey pushed me to wake up earlier, endure the rising heat, and walk further each day. When pain slowed me down, he suggested splitting my backpack between the three of us, allowing us to move faster each and reach our goal together. This is unity, hiking style. Jeffrey and I gathered the natural elements in this work together during a trail walk, creating not only a beautiful memory, but also an interesting play of textures. It is the presence of these materials and Jeffrey's hand in gathering them that makes this work unlike any other for me. When asked about the importance of materials and his regular process of creation, Ansel Kiefer explains that he has to do it himself, not allowing his assistant to be involved in the process. The master refuses to, quote, trust that the other one take out the spirit, end of quote. What the master refers to here is the essence of materiality and the connection that we each form through the sense of touch when we react to an organic material at the cellular level, an experience I am often aware of. Such materials have spiritual properties innate to them, which carries their history and energy, and is not shared by any other. This is a recent realization for me, and one that inspires me to diversify the materials for my work as I move forward in my practice. Having felt a connection with the land and beings I encountered, I had to express the moments of indignation and profound sadness I experienced during my hike. Ghost Forest is a diptych inspired by the devastation I experienced at mile marker 574.9, coming out of a dense forest stretch where my senses were shocked by the destruction witnessed. Without warning, I walked into an apocalyptic landscape where giant trees lay fallen. Rainwater puddled in the ruts made by the machines that destroyed this precious habitat and former home to thousands of beings. The land was cleared for a luxury condominium complex, proudly announced on billboards throughout the area. This is what's happening in Florida now, and in our country, while veterans lay homeless on the streets, marginalized neighborhoods struggle from the absence of their incarcerated residents, and hardworking people cannot afford to buy a home to raise a family on a double income household. The disturbance I felt resonated for months and manifested itself in this painting. It is a mourning work that honors the wealth of life that used to thrive in this land. In methodology, I was inspired in part by the works of Chinese-American painter Hong Liu, whose dripping technique works cohesively with her subjects and composition, adding drama, variety, and contrast to her work. I prepared my canvas for part one of the diptych with dripping brown and earth-toned reds, conveying the carnage I related to this scene. I also used my own version of a technique called decalcomania, developed in the 1700s and later popularized by the surrealist artist Max Ernst, in which a glass panel is applied to wet paint on canvas and is slowly pulled away, leaving intriguing marks on the surface. My goal was to create unexpected marks that read as fallen trees on the ground without rendering forms through shape and value. Thus, this work became a process-led experience. Combining these techniques, I convey chaos below the horizon line where human activity occurred, while it is juxtaposed by the upper section where untouched trees still stand majestically pointing towards an untroubled sky above the horizon line. In Europe after the rain, Max Ernst uses the decalcomania technique with glass and oil paints to convey a strange, uncommon landscape. Dreading studio work during prime hiking season, I took to the trail to complete the second diptych piece at my weekly nature sanctuary. Transporting a large, unstretched canvas to a foot access only location was a challenge, solved by a foldable support board carried like an oversized portfolio. After a mile-and-a-half trek, I reached my chosen spot, where a body of water set a reflective mood, deepening my connection to the land. Painting until rain forced my retreat, I left physically exhausted, but creatively recharged. My exposed body stands defiantly, shielding untamed nature, surrounded by Monstera deliciosa, like me, a South American native thriving in Florida. The warm orange, red, yellow base contrasts with dominant blues and greens, creating vibrancy throughout. Chapter 4, Of Flesh and Mud, Reclaiming Myself. In the trail community, there is a saying that goes, the trail will provide. Finding a bandana or a ponytail holder when needed, food in a trail box, or gallons of fresh water left by trail angels in the middle of a dry stretch is proof of this. Despite calling this adventure an art hike, careful planning and packing, and receiving a shakedown by experienced thru hikers, I had to shed several pounds of equipment and art supplies 3 times in the first 150 miles. This was due to chronic hip, knee, and ankle pain caused by the excessive weight I carried, both on my bones and in my frameless homemade backpack, which was replaced by a pack from Walmart that I carried for the rest of my trek. With each pound I shed, I conserved energy needed to reach the northern terminus. Walking the trail also forced me to discard feelings no longer beneficial in my life. After having exhausted rumination, I met the little girl I once was and listened to what she had to say. Rumination, according to Bradman et al., and as I experienced it, is the prolonged and often maladaptive attentional focus on the causes and consequences of emotions, most often negative, self-relational emotions. Here is my hiking painting setup, the first morning on the trail. Eventually, it was reduced to the pocket-sized sketchpad, picture on the lower right. Louise Bourgeois was a French-American artist whose body of work explores the trauma she experienced as a child and the processes used in distilling the emotions stemming from it. Self-admittedly, Bourgeois always had an interest in what she called, quote, the runaway girl, a girl who doesn't function in the family cell very well, who is ashamed of herself for some idiotic reason, end of quote. Throughout different moments in my life, I have seen myself as this runaway girl, unacceptable or not enough, physically based on the unrealistic beauty standards set by media, and mentally held back by self-deprecating thoughts fueled by doubts, mean jokes, and undiagnosed ADHD. Like Bourgeois, my work is autobiographical, expands across disciplines, and refuses to fit in a box. I express myself the best way I see fit, not in a specific discipline that I'm supposed to have mastered or stick to. The Broken Woman is the result of my search for the beginning of my transformation story, one that shows the destruction, beauty, and hope I still held within me while adjusting to life as a divorcee. Conceptually, I thought about having to rebuild my life from the ground up after stepping out of the dying industry that was traditional special effects animation at the time that my baby was born. My altruistic nature, the commodification of my physical and emotional being, the politics of gender and labor in a capitalist society, addictions and paralyzing fears are present in this piece. Understanding Karl Marx's concepts of relative, equivalent value, and value relation aids me in production of my work within the society in which I live. To Marx, commodities are like fetishes because they are products of human brains, hands, and labor. Does this mean that my daughters and my existence became a fetish once a quantitative value in the form of alimony was estimated for the equivalent value we accrued during my marriage? To me, the answer is yes. A mannequin helped me convey the feelings of filthiness and unfairness I experienced when I was forced to change my role of a wife, homemaker, and mother to that of a worker who is paid in exchange for the goods and services delivered. The underpainting is a vibrant pink, which I relate to my once loud and bright personality, now hidden under many life experiences in the form of layer paints and scratches. A broken Golded birdcage houses a cell phone playing a loop video of static noise, representing my breaking out of depression and self-entrapments, which affected my mental and physical well-being. Growing up, images of the Sacred Heart inspired thoughts of sacrifice, eternal love, and mercy, which translates to my representation of the same in the mannequin's chest cavity. The use of gold found throughout my work represents the immense value and importance of the subject. It derives from my memories of indigenous pre-Hispanic works from Colombia, the birthplace of stories about lost cities made of gold and offerings of the same to the sun in exchange of riches. In time, as the Spanish Empire colonized the New World, devotional images containing these precious metals were created to indoctrinate the populace and natives. To my own self, I am true, continues a conversation begun with the broken woman, shifting it to inspire strength. In this work, I show the shattered and self-derogatory state where I found myself after divorce, rising to become the nature goddess, acknowledging pain and joy as essentials in my making me the person I am today. The background figures, in motion and monochrome, contrast with the stationary, full-color figure in the foreground, representing both the visible and unseen aspects of myself. My holding Boo symbolizes purity and sacrifice like the lamb in devotional art, and reflects his innocence and unconditional love for me. I use the Verdaccio technique in the color portrait, developed during the early Renaissance in Italy, which uses tones of greens and underpainting to create depth and form. The composition is inspired by the movement, grandeur, and drama characteristic of the Baroque period, and the iconic works of Flemish painter Peter Paul Rubens. Like the master, I relied on allegory to create a relatable narrative. To my own self, I am true explores tension and duality, contrasting emotional evolution with the stoicism of the middle figure, and mind versus reality. The sky's cool and warm colors symbolize the hope of a new dawn. The rising figures emerging from smoke reflect my interest in the ethereal realm and lean into my background as a special effects animation artist. My memories have often led to self-scrutiny through rumination. A 2015 study by Bratman et al. Found that exposure to nature is linked to reduced rumination and activation of the prefrontal cortex, or PFC, which governs attention, behavior, and emotions. Impaired PFC function is associated with depression, anxiety, and ADHD symptoms. Walking the FNST was not only a physical challenge, but also a mental reset for me, helping me reconnect with my inner self and focus on what brings me happiness. Before Love captures the resilient, sensitive child I rediscover on the trail, hidden beneath adulthood. The 6 rays emitting from my body symbolize my family, while the small figure with a twig stands on red leaves, like those on the nature goddess headdress, referring to the power that has always been within me. Once again, I leaned on my upbringing by Catholic nuns and the devotional imagery that I was exposed to as a child. Our Lady of the Rosary of Chiquinquirá was created by the Seville-born painter Alonso de Narváez, the first non-painter to establish himself in the New World, shortly after the founding of the city of Tunja in Colombia in 1539. The painting was created using crushed herbs and flowers as pigments on a cotton canvas weaved by indigenous people. It is a landmark in the history of art in South America, not only for its execution but also its subject. Despite its condition, the use of gold is still visible as an abundant and precious material, raising its perceived and intrinsic values. The composition and use of mixed media in Before Love is inspired by contemporary artist Carrie Pearce, who portrays children as seen in Victorian photographs found in flea markets. She elevates and celebrates their imagined individualities with rich textures using beads and found objects. She uses oil glazing, the painting method pioneered by Van Eyck in the 1400s. I find Pearce's use of contemporary objects and traditional painting methods both innovative and familiar, giving the artist control over every step of the painting phase while liberating the same from expectations set by materials. For Louise Bourgeois, quote, art is a guarantee of sanity, end of quote, as she expressed in her installation titled Precious Liquid in 1992. For me, along with nature's ability to halt rumination, art is life-saving. Diving Upwards is an autobiographical piece that links the Florida landscape to my recovery from depression, symbolizing freedom from it. Florida birds and rising humans navigate a chaotic, nature-driven world, sharing my personal journey while extending solidarity to those others in transformation. I drew inspiration from Francisco Goya's Black paintings and Harold Newton's works, using their contrasts to experience my own language. My art reflects oppositional ideas: brokenness versus wholesomeness, calmness versus desperation, youth versus old age, beauty versus destruction, and foreignness versus familiarity. It mirrors my own life: a loved child who faced harsh discipline, a dual citizen navigating foreignness in America, an independent woman who sacrificed for love, a mother distanced from her daughter, and an introspective artist seeking to serve others. In the upper panel, birds and people collide to create a new form of freedom never experienced by either one. Francisco Goya's Saturn devouring his son evokes horror, not just from the subject but from the artist's interpretation. Art historian Teresa Vega notes that Saturn's eyes suggest shock at his own monstrousness, reflecting his role in his own trauma. This recognition of self-inflicted harm resonates with me, as this monster exists in all of us, whether in our thoughts or actions. It leads to depression and self-destruction because while hurting others, we harm ourselves. In the lower panel of my triptych, figures release their inner monster and rise towards the warmth of the new day, interrupting established harmful behaviors. Harold Newton, a founder of the Florida Highwayman and native Floridian, took up landscape painting encouraged by painter A. E. Backus, whose techniques he watched closely and eventually mastered. He created and sold hundreds of paintings out of the trunk of his car along the highway due to segregation. His works exemplify the beauty and rawness that I find in the Florida landscape. The vivid colors relate the subject to a magical allegory, while still presenting concrete evidence of location found in the vegetation described. Like Newton, I also often choose to work outdoors, both on location and at home, feeling the elements and sounds around me, making my practice a multisensory experience. Closing this chapter, I reflect on the edge of the exosphere. Coffee, a proud staple product of Colombia, is used as ground for this painting, embedding the most intimate surface of the work with an essence of my homeland. Standing barefoot in the muddy trail, I connect with the earth, feeling one with it. The word human originates from the word humus, meaning earth, reminding us of our humble beginnings. Hidden under water ripples, two female figures represent me meeting myself at life's edge, both physically in the earth beneath my feet and metaphorically at the edge of the exosphere, the outermost layer of planet Earth's atmosphere. The statement for this work reads as follows. Like layers of rock and dirt, my years on earth pile on top of each other until my heart stops beating and my body is laid to rest in the soil. My essence will then continue moving towards the exosphere, where at the edge of it I will meet the infinite me that guards the realm of my thoughts. I will greet myself kindly, enveloping what has been with gratitude and what will continue to be with wonder again. Chapter 5. The Magnifying Glass, From the Micro to the Macro. In my world, tree hugger equals hero. The term comes from the Bishnoi people of India, who in 1730 sacrificed their lives to protect trees in the Kajarli forest. Guided by their belief in not harming trees or animals, they hugged the trees to prevent them from being felled. Despite their efforts, soldiers killed them while collecting wood for an imperial palace. The Kajarli massacre, in which 363 people died, became a pivotal moment in environmental advocacy. This event preceded the 1970s Chipko movement in India, an early and continued ecofeminist movement against deforestation, largely driven by women affected by the scarcity of resources. After my walk, being labeled a tree hugger no longer felt like a mocking insult. Playing in the Forest of Life is a self-portrait reflecting the passage of time. By portraying myself as a tree at different stages of life, I become what I admire and protect. A young life-giving version of me sits on the left as a southern magnolia tree, shaking its branches to shower flowers and leaves with children playing beneath. A passion vine reaches towards a nest of northern mockingbirds, the state bird of Florida and Texas, while an older version of me grasps a flower pensively, enjoying the view and exposing her barren limbs. This work allows me to observe my own narrative, celebrating the joy of being myself after sharing parenthood with a man from Texas and embracing a new life chapter. Hummingbirds and dragonflies symbolize love, peace, and transformation. My initial idea for this work sprung from a small sketch. I redesigned the concept to become a triptych, created a rough sketch, and collected references, settling for a more precise composition of the most immediate panel to be carved and leaving room for changes as the work evolved. I then scaled up the sketches in a grid and drew the design with Sharpie on each board as I progressed, tinted it with red acrylic, and proceeded to carve. The carving process was laborious and physically demanding, and it was done mostly with a hand tool, except in the large areas where I used an automatic carver. I proofed each plate as it was finished, gluing it to the next once the section was completed. Once again, I worked while outdoors as much as possible. Holding a hand tool and carving into a piece of wood while birds chirped around me brought an immense sense of inner peace. At the end of the day, the physicality of carving, the aches and pains in my arms, shoulders, and hands were a sweet reminder of the labor I had begun, making the piece a part of me long after the studio session had ended. The discomfort experience was a daily reminder of my smallness compared to the size of the work, the poetic beauty I found in the composition, and the experiences lived that brought it into existence. I was inspired to create this large-scale woodblock print after my introduction to the works of Tom Huck, a contemporary printmaker known for his controversial allegorical social commentary. In a 2022 podcast, he said, quote, "I work really large because I want people to deal with it visually. My stuff is not made to go on someone's phone." End of quote. This sense of defiance pushed my own boundaries and led me to create the largest print I've ever made. Like me, Huck is also inspired by the prints of Albrecht Dürer and Gustave Doré. The interchangeable bottom panels and border of Playing in the Forest of Life are inspired by the work of the pre-Raphaelite artist Sir Edward Burne-Jones and designer William Morris. Their work is found in their 4-year collaboration and much acclaimed Kelmscott-Chaucer book, published in 1896. I was drawn to this illustrious work for its rich imagery, technical excellence, and timeless beauty. The poet W. B. Yeats once described the book as, quote, "the most beautiful of all printed books." End of quote. It is also only one of three, along with Shakespeare's First Folio and the Gutenberg Bible, to have a census to determine who owns a copy of it. Inspired by the timelessness of the Kelmscott-Chaucer, I aim to create work that endures beyond my lifetime. Memories of a Dead Love reflects my journey of parenting through and after divorce, deepening my bond with my daughter in unforeseen ways. This series of copper etchings and aquatints printed in sepia ink captures an internal experience rather than a physical event. Expanding on the metaphors found in Playing in the Forest of Life, my protagonists continue to appear as northern mockingbirds and symbols of adaptation and survival after love's end. Inspired by the novel 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I suspend time and believe as it is suspended in the fictional town of Macondo, where time stands still and magical events create both tension and intrigue. In 4 images, I use metaphor to explore the often unspoken consequences of a socially accepted norm that doesn't guarantee a happy ending. This politic and my string series draws visual influence from Francisco Goya's The Disasters of War print series, which depicts Spain's resistance against Napoleon during the Peninsular War. Like Goya, I use chaotic background markings, horizonless spaces, and high contrast to create ambiguity. This ambiguity heightens uncertainty, blurring past and future, reality and psyche, while the lightest areas draw focus. The string series, 3 charcoal and pastel drawings, explores attachments, entrapments, and domination. Encuerdada, strung, captures movement within a static mindset, reflecting societal control and self-imposed limits in relationships. Like the broken woman, Reich mannequins symbolize the human form's commodification and disposability. Reawakening the Colossus shows humanity reawakened by those tired of excuses, determined to open its eyes to nature's fading presence. Humanity's Hair shows the constellations on the night of July 30th, 2024, when I created the work, from my exact coordinates, serving as a timestamp and a call for action. I love you and I wish you the best reflects a conversation with my former husband, visualizing emotional and physical distance. Inspired by the lasting scars of both words and war amid Gaza's conflict, it conveys hope for healing through nature. This is the first of 4 panels, currently under progress. Like Bourgeois, Mendieta, and other artists mentioned here, My work facilitates my understanding and helps me deal with my reality. Nancy Fraser, renowned American philosopher, feminist, and scholar, says that, quote, gender inequalities are foundational to capitalism and threaded through it. End of quote. This statement is supported in Self-Portrait as the Perfect Woman, which reflects an ideal I once pursued. It draws on American post-World War II nostalgia, when advertising reshaped women's roles, replacing Rosie the Riveter's strength with domestic ideals of June Cleaver and Donna Stone's. This era fueled modern consumerism and reinforced womanhood as synonymous with domesticity. At first glance, Self-Portrait as the Perfect Woman is a playful caricature, but beneath it lies loneliness and pressure to conform. Red eyes hint at silent tears, while lipstick, pearls, and lace nod to consumer-driven ideals of beauty and femininity. Scuff shoes reflect the struggle to maintain appearances despite hardship. Golden strings suspend the marionette below my gaze, symbolizing a shift in perspective, where she looks up to me instead. This piece is the first in a set of 6 cut to create as autobiographical metaphors. I see overconsumption as a capitalist byproduct that often outweighs respect for nature, other species, and the self. The cathedral, within and without, is my largest installation and recreates my trail experience, where I encountered towering trees, realized the smallness of my body and nature's vast love. Its simple lines draw the gaze upward, offering transcendence beyond materialism and prompting reflection on life's impermanence against nature's enduring greatness. It is made of heat-treated bamboo stalks harvested from my yard, a rigid and lightweight natural material of high tensile strength used in traditional building applications in Asia and South America for thousands of years. The process of installation on UCF grounds began with detailed schematics for the work and 2 proposed locations, to be approved by the MFA's programs director and the facilities department. I used satellite imagery and photos taken at the locations showing exact placement and distances of concern. This work was a labor of love and muscle for me. I harvested, prepped, and heat treated over 30 stalks of bamboo, ranging from 12 to over 40 feet in height, replacing a few due to unexpected damage. I drilled flat stock metal, cut rebar, tested, failed, and succeeded in many ways. The stalks were kept indoors in a climate-controlled environment until they were 100% dried to prevent damage by humidity. Figuring out the logistics for installation, transportation, and storage for a work this size taught me a great deal. At night, the cathedral is bathed by green light, recalling the light under a forest canopy. Forest bathing, or Shinrin-yoku, is a Japanese practice of immersing oneself in the natural environment and receiving green light to engage the senses and promote health. Green light has also been proven effective in reducing inflammation and lowering chronic pain when used in photobiomodulation, or PBM therapy. The cathedral, within and without, recalls the magnitude of Louise Bourgeois' Maman, created in 1999, because the theme of motherhood runs throughout the concept in both pieces. For Bourgeois, the spider stood as a reminder of her mother, an industrious tapestry weaver. For me, the cathedral represents the ever-present and engulfing love that Mother Nature offers me. The size of both works is overpowering and plays with perceptions of scale and the self, altering reality. In reference to Walter Benjamin's 1936 essay titled The Work of Art in the Age of Mechanical Reproduction, the scale of this and other large pieces in my body of work makes their aura larger than ourselves, fully commanding the space they take and making our experience of it the most important element to consider. Chapter 6: Reaching the Terminus and Setting a New Compass. As I enter a new era in my life, I also enter a new era of consciousness achieved through the work begun in this program. Through my artistic and academic research over the past 3 years, I have found my voice within the rich artistic, feminine, and Latino legacies I inherit, and have deepened my understanding of the complex political culture I navigate. My work is political because it reflects my experiences and perceptions as a member of a society that is governed by written and unwritten rules and expectations. I trust that my inquiries will continue to lead the development of my abilities, which always meet me at the correct intersections of the work I create. This year, I am a semifinalist of the 2025-2026 Fulbright Grant, and I hope to become a finalist. If so, I will be communing with Indigenous people in Colombia to continue exploring the relationships between nature and humans from an Indigenous perspective. I will also share my knowledge of animation to help amplify their voices and that of nature. But as this decision is dependent on factors outside myself, I also plan to continue applying for this grant until my project becomes a reality. Regardless of the outcome, after visiting Colombia this summer, I will be heading back to my sleepy town of Yalaha, where I will continue with my artistic research while furthering my studies and seeking opportunities for employment at the collegiate level. Thank you for your attention. At this time, I conclude my presentation and welcome questions from the thesis committee to move forward in my thesis defense. I now open the floor to audience members and welcome any questions related to my presentation or my work. This concludes my thesis defense. Thank you for your attention and support.